Bronny James has NBA social media as divided as the 2020 election, as the most polarizing athlete of a generation is basically arranged for his son to be drafted by the Los Angeles Lakers, the team he plays for, to create the first ever father-son duo in NBA history. Rest assured that if this was anyone else, the story would be all positive. If this was Al Horford and his son was drafted by the Boston Celtics with one of the last picks in the draft, we'd be praising them for doing something cool, uniting a seasoned vet with his son before he hangs it up after a long career. But this isn't Al Horford. It's LeBron James. And that makes all the difference. From the stories surrounding the family for years that LeBron really wanted the chance to play with his son before he retires, which essentially put a clock on Bronny's development to ensure that he made it to the draft at the earliest possible moment, to saying that Bronny could play for the Lakers right now when they were going through a tough stretch, to then complaining on social media to just let the kid be a kid and not put this kind of pressure on him. To Rich Paul later saying that LeBron was over his dream of playing with his son, but then still making sure that he only worked out for the Lakers and the Suns, and reportedly calling teams during the second round and threatening them that if they try to draft him, he's going to go play in Australia, virtually guaranteeing that he'd still be on the board at 55 for the Lakers so that they could inevitably fulfill LeBron's original dream by drafting Bronny and allowing the two to play together after all. Yeah, it's dramatic. And you can see how even rational people from the outside could look at it and think that LeBron was pulling the strings all along. And add it to the large group of LeBron haters that'll find any reason that they can to bash him, including his family. Yeah, it's really dramatic. But it's far from the only situation in the NBA where favoritism exists. Look at the Knicks, whose president is Leon Rose, who was Rick Brunson's agent, who now works as an assistant coach for the Knicks, who named Leon Rose the godfather to his son, Jalen Brunson, who is represented by Leon's son, Sam Rose, and negotiated for Jalen to sign with the Knicks as a free agent in which the team was found guilty of for tampering. But now they're applauded for being good with Jalen Brunson as their primary player after they surrounded him with two of his college teammates in Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo, one of which he has a podcast with called The Roommates, where they openly recruited their other college teammate, Mikal Bridges, when he was playing for the Nets, who the Knicks just traded for. There are two Antetokounmpo brothers who have made plenty of money thanks to their brother Giannis. Cleveland drafted Isaiah Mobley, the older brother of their young big man Evan Mobley. Seth Curry keeps getting contracts, and just in this draft, there were multiple prospects taken whose older brothers were already in the NBA. But yeah, the Lakers drafting LeBron's son is definitely too far on the nepotism. But is it nepotism? Sure. The kid grew up with the man that many call the GOAT, but he called dad. He had advantages most kids don't, that his father surely didn't. And if playing in the NBA was going to be his dream, he was going to have every resource available to him to give him the best chance, and then some. But is that all this is? Let's look at Bronny James as a prospect. He was a little bit of a late bloomer physically who didn't get the genetic growth spurt of his father, only measured in at 6'1.5" at the combine, which is without shoes, by the way. A change that was made back in 2020 where they decided to start taking draft measurements without their shoes on for some reason. Up until then, all the height measurements were players with shoes, and most of them were inflated for the back of Topps trading cards. Allen Iverson at one point in time in his career was listed at 6'1". Just saying. In shoes, and by normal NBA standards, Bronny James is a 6'3" guard with a 6'7" wingspan, which isn't immaculate size like his father, but in most scenarios, people would consider that perfectly fine for a guard in the modern NBA. The inch or two that he gives up in height to other off guards, he makes up for in length with his wingspan, which is often considered more important for a measurement anyways. His numbers at USC were underwhelming. He only started 6 games, averaging 5 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists in 20 minutes per game, and that was coming off of an incredibly scary cardiac arrest in late July. He wasn't even cleared to play basketball again until the last day of November last year. He didn't play in his first game until the second week of December, and we're here quibbling over his points per game average when it seems like we should have been amazed that he played at all. It's also strange to me that Isaiah Collier was at USC with Bronny too, and he didn't play well either. After being touted as like the top prospect going in, he winds up being taken with the 29th pick at the end of the first round. I personally think that in 5 years, both of these guys are going to be good NBA players in their own respects, and we're going to look back at that USC time and wonder what the heck was going on. But even with my speculation and that added context, Bronny didn't put up NBA lottery type stats in college. But he wasn't taken in the lottery. There have been plenty of NBA players who have had underwhelming college stats and wound up having solid NBA careers. Or better. Jimmy Butler didn't start a game his sophomore year at Marquette, scoring just 5.5 points a game, 4 rebounds, and 1 assist. When he finally came out to the combine, he was obviously taller than Bronny, right, at 6'6", but his wingspan was only 1 inch longer at 6'8". Devin Booker never started a game at Kentucky. Reed Shepherd only started 5 and was picked at number 3 in this year's draft as a 6'2" off guard. Russell Westbrook, another 6'3" guard, only started 1 game as a freshman at UCLA. Zach LaVine started 1 game at UCLA. You get the idea. These players not only made it to the NBA, but they're stars who have made max money with the exception of Shepherd, who obviously we're going to see what happens. As I mentioned too, several of those guys aren't big guards, and there are plenty of small guards who are making a living in the NBA without being lead ball handlers. Malik Monk, a 6'3" off guard, just finished second in 6th Man of the Year voting and signed a $78 million contract with the Kings. Terry Rozier is 6'1". Emmanuel Quickley is 6'2" and just got paid with Toronto. While he plays the point more for them, they run their stuff through Scotty Barnes and he played the 2 in New York. Cam Thomas is 6'3". DeAnthony Melton, Isaiah Joe, both 6'3". Craig Porter in Cleveland is 6'1". There's a ton of guys playing off the ball in the NBA who aren't tall. And the point of pointing that out isn't to even say that Bronny will be as good as all of those guys. But he doesn't have to be. Bronny James wasn't taken with a top 5 pick. He wasn't drafted in the lottery. His name wasn't even called on the first day of the draft. He was selected 55th in a year where there were only 58 selections, just 3 picks away from the very end. He shouldn't be expected to be a star. He's a second-round flyer in a weak draft class that would have been worth taking a chance on even if he wasn't going to the Lakers, even if he wasn't LeBron James' son. Before USC, he was a 4-star prospect in high school, a McDonald's All-American, and played at Sierra Canyon, which has turned out plenty of NBA talent before him. And oh yeah, he is also LeBron James' son. Tom Haberstroh recently posted an article showing that since 1989, NBA draft picks whose dad played in the NBA outperformed their draft slot by 30%. That's more than any college in the country. So if you're a GM that's going to take a flyer on a guy in the second round and you're hoping that they outplay their draft position, picking one whose dad played in the NBA is a pretty good bet to make. And for Bronny, could he have gone back to school? Sure. Could that have helped him develop as a basketball player? Sure. But that isn't really how it works these days. Guys don't play 3 or 4 years in college and come into the draft more NBA ready. On the contrary, the Lakers were able to get Dalton Knecht at 17 in this year's draft, much later than anticipated, and all the reports on draft night were that it was because of his age. He was too old at 23 to be a lottery pick. And even if Bronny went back, he doesn't seem like the guy who's going to put up gaudy stats. The scouting report on him makes it seem like he's going to play more of a connector role no matter where he is. So going back doesn't guarantee big stats and a big jump in the draft for a guy like him anyways. Especially if you consider that next year's draft is touted as one that draft people have been looking forward to for years, with potential stars at the top like Cooper Flagg that teams are already ready to tank for. There's no guarantee that he'd be able to improve his draft position even if he was an objectively better player next year. So why not come out in a weaker class when getting drafted is more likely and develop within an NBA organization with NBA habits and NBA resources instead of college, even if that means time in the G League. And for the Lakers, yeah, you're betting on the DNA. You're improving your relationship with LeBron. And you're adding to his legacy and your own by being the first organization to pair a father and son as teammates. In the Lakers, a family-run organization who have always been about taking care of their stars and had a flair for the dramatic, let's face it, They love this stuff. And now LeBron, who's all but guaranteed to re-sign, is coming off another ridiculous season. He played 71 games last year, nearly scoring 26 points a game, over 7 rebounds and 8 assists, shooting 54% from the field and 41% from 3. Another All-NBA season, and he did it at 39, while the sports media world continued to scramble for who's the next face of the league arguments because he can't keep doing this forever. But how long can he keep going? If playing with Bronny was the last legacy box to check, does he hang it up? Is there anything left to chase? Well, the numbers suggest he could play forever. And he's got another son. Don't look now, but Bryce James is 17, just a couple years away from possible draft eligibility. And unlike Bronny, there won't be any questions about his size. He's already listed at 6'6", with a couple D1 offers on the table, and on Team USA's under-17 team with several other kids that come from NBA stock. The little bit that I've read is that he's the one with the natural shooting ability. And if he develops that and breaks out over the next couple of years, it's not hard to imagine that he and Bronny could be another one of those many sets of brothers that make it to NBA rosters. The question is, will LeBron still be there too? It sounds crazy. A 42 or 43-year-old hanging on to an NBA career just for the chance to play with or against both of his sons? And he's lost a step on defense, a little explosiveness, but even at 39, he's still capable of locking down some of the best perimeter players for a possession when they need it, and as I mentioned earlier, the offensive production is still elite. What part of that seems like a guy who couldn't keep playing for a few more years? But would he want to? Let's say he does finally show that decline that many expected 5+ years ago. Would LeBron James stick around as a role player or a veteran leader just for the chance to make it until both of his sons are in the NBA? Or will he ultimately want to feel like he went out on top and not let the world see the diminished version of himself that other past stars have become at the end of their careers? What say you? Let me know in the comments. Are we a few years away from all 3 of the Jameses being on NBA rosters? Or will LeBron hang it up before then, now that he's got a chance to play with Bronny?